Hey guys, it's Prince Asbel, and today we're going to have a little bit of fun with a video by the Young Turks, which I didn't know existed before, but it was made last year, and I wanted to find something to make a video about before Christmas, before the end of the year, basically. And this one, actually, I think we'll have a little bit of fun with, so we'll go ahead and just get right into it.
This is not a sports story. It has to do with some of their questionable behavior and the way that they wrote in public documents about women in a very degrading way. So Harvard has canceled the men's soccer team season after the Office of General Counsel review found that the team continued to produce vulgar and explicit documents rating women on their perceived sexual appeal and physical appearance.
Oh my goodness, they typed out what they thought about women. How dare they?
The 2012 men's soccer team created a scouting report of that year's women's soccer recruits, rating them numerically and assigning each a hypothetical sexual position. Now, CBS reported on this, and they give a little more detail about it, so let's take a quick look, and then I'm going to read you exactly what they said in these scouting reports. Take a look.
I'm going to skip most of this CBS excerpt because it's just a rehash of what was already said, but there's one snippet I'd like to play.
The Crimson became aware of the documents a couple of weeks ago.
Mariel Klein is the president of the Harvard Crimson and a senior at the university.
It was a publicly available document on the internet. It was actually taken down after we contacted the members of the 2012 men's soccer team for comment.
Yeah, they probably took it down because they were wondering why a newspaper was asking them about some vulgar things they said online. Why else would you or any other journalist for this paper be asking them about it in the first place, if not to bring some punishment on them for saying what they did?
So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a serious consequence for what they did, but I would argue that what they did is pretty serious. Look, it's one thing if you're going to have, your boys talk about like, oh, that woman's hot and I like her, or whatever you men talk about, right?
It's one thing, what? Anna, it's one thing to do that. Is it okay for men to have our boys talk? Do we have your permission to engage in boys talk? Freaking feminist.
But it's another thing to create a publicly available document where you name individuals coming into the school. These are freshmen, okay, coming into the school, and you refer to them and say things like, she looks like the kind of girl who both likes to dominate and likes to be dominated.
How is that different? Why shouldn't they say that? It's one thing to engage in boys talk, but this particular kind of boys talk isn't okay?
Her gum-to-tooth ratio is about 1-to-1, making fun of her smile.
Oh, man, geez, they made fun of her smile, and women don't mock short men behind their backs about their height? How is boys talk okay, but these specific phrases, how do they not count as boy talk? How do they... Her gum-to-tooth ratio is about 1-to-1. He insulted somebody. He made fun of her. We've got to bring the hammer down.
Yeah, she wants...
Okay. That's actually kind of funny. But, again, why is this wrong? What if they were right? Would that make it okay, or does it remain inappropriate in the Anna Kasparian code of conduct?
She seems to be very strong, tall, and manly, so I give her a 3 because I felt bad.
That's pretty harsh, but again, who cares? Somebody out there said something negative about somebody else. Get over it. This is the way the world works. You don't like it, find a moon to live on.
Yeah. No, not guilty. So we might have really a strong disagreement here.
Yes, we will, thank God.
So they didn't mail this to the female team.
They just made a publicly available document on the internet where
Publicly available. It's a Google Doc. Why would anybody go into Harvard men's soccer's Google Doc where they're talking to one another?
That's exactly right. Google Docs don't turn up in search engines. You would have to actively hunt it down or figure out who owned it and get them to share it with you if you weren't already a member of the soccer team. Yeah, it's public, but that does not matter if the members of the public can't find it.
The head of their student newspaper found the document.
I know, and she had a great time publishing it, and she should. I get it. She's doing her job as a journalist.
Oh, come on, Cenk. At one point, it seems like he's about to become the voice of reason, then he says something retarded. No, she should not have published it. If this document degraded women, she shouldn't have published it. It's almost like Cenk knows that she shouldn't have, and that's why I took a little bit of a shot at her for doing so. But yeah, why would you republish it if that just degraded the women more? Especially the women in there who didn't know about it to begin with. It seems to me the only one who facilitated the quote-unquote degradation of these women is the newspaper that published it. I know this woman was a journalist, but how did she find it? It looked almost like she might have been trying to give an answer at one point about how she came to know about the existence of this document, but the audio commentary from CBS covered over hers, and they crossfaded, and it's too difficult to pick out the few words that she did say. But if somebody had to tell her about it, that means that it wasn't just up there for people to just come across. And by the way, Cenk, I know you're trying to be the voice of reason here, but she's not doing her job as a journalist. This is not a news story. This was a college newspaper. Construction of a new dormitory is newsworthy. A change in the presidency is newsworthy. Men typing out sexually explicit things about women online is not newsworthy.
But it's not like they made a public document, like they put it on Facebook or they tweeted it out. That's a Google Doc is shared in a group. Yes, it's technically public, but it's not meant to be public, meaning like they're not rubbing their faces in it.
That's exactly right. The context of what happened, including the nature of Google Docs, should affect your opinion of these male soccer players. Had these men mailed this Google Doc to the girls at home, like printed it out, that might be one thing, but that wasn't what happened. They did nothing wrong.
So, look, young college guys rated the appearance of young college women. Shocking, breaking news alert. So, totally not guilty, in my opinion.
Yeah, just guilty of being dumb. I mean, it's not like
I don't even think it's dumb.
Well, I think it's dumb to put it in a Google document.
Wow.
I think
guess.
that part of it. I mean, it's not like they went to Harvard or anything, but it's.
So
Evidently, there's too much reasonable dissension for Anna Kasparian to tolerate, so she has to break in and object. Too much logic, not enough venom. Somebody has to bring the hammer down.
So you would be cool with your daughter going to college and then reading about how the men's soccer team talks about her wanting.
That's what guys talk about.
Oh,
I
that's what
understand
guys
that.
talk about.
Yeah, that's what guys talk about, but apparently that's just not okay. Men will be men, and we must punish them for being men. If someone says something crude about our daughters, even in private, we must not tolerate him.
Then they
Yeah.
talk about grabbing women by the.
They
No,
don't,
but that's
they
different.
Don't. They
That's
don't.
different.
That's aggressive, and I mean, it's
So the difference between the Trump stuff and this stuff is Trump talked about what he would do, and what he outlined was sexual assault. I just do it and I don't ask them, he said. I grab their genitals and I don't ask them, and I get away with it because I'm a star. That's what he said. So that involves literal, actual sexual assault, and it turns out, according to the complaints of women lodged afterwards, he actually did those things. Now, the soccer team didn't sexually assault anybody.
I completely disagree with Cenk's opinion of what Donald Trump said and whether that was sexual assault. I can still appreciate the distinction he's making. What the men's soccer team did was type words to each other. They were not hurting anyone, nor were they secretly admitting to having committed criminal sexual misconduct. It's comparing apples to oranges.
So,
Just
like,
because they
almost
didn't sexually assault anyone, just because they didn't put their hands on anyone, based on what we know, doesn't mean that this isn't wrong. So look, if you agree with policies and laws against sexual harassment in the workplace, why doesn't this fall under that category? If there were a group of male employees in this office writing a similar document and I brought it to your...
100% different.
Why is it
100%.
different?
I'll
Why
tell
is
you
it
why it's
different?
different.
It's not different.
Because one, they don't work together. Two, they're not on the same team. Three, the male team has no power over the female team.
They go to the same school.
Of course they do, and they hook up. So some of them hook up, some of them don't. And you know what? If you went to a frat party, some of the girls would be saying about some of the guys, he's got a nice or, oh, he's a mess, or this or that. And they'd talk about his tooth to gum ratio, and they would snicker. Because that's what women do, and that's what guys do. And we've been doing it for as long as humanity has existed. And so they put it in a Google Doc. Not guilty.
100% agree with Cenk here. It's always amazing to see someone with such bizarre views as Cenk Uygur come out once in a while as the voice of reason.
But you know what? You know how Donald Trump said this was locker room talk when he was talking about what he said on the bus and the assault stuff? This is locker room talk. And it's not necessarily defensible. It's silly, it's puerile, it's all of these things that are terrible that guys do. But this is locker room talk. Hey, I'd like to, hey, there's a line and a limit. Though, you know, Cenk says not guilty. No, they're guilty of this. They're guilty of this. They did this, and there should be a consequence to having this come out. So I don't
What are they
see
guilty
it.
of?
Well, they're guilty of degrading, of bad comportment in the eyes of Harvard, of setting a terrible example for other students, of creating an atmosphere within. I mean, I'm not saying high and mighty that those things don't happen. There are fraternities and sororities and teams and schools, and people are all young and all that. But I think there should be a consequence to saying things like this in a public way as a group of people that degrades other people.
The only thing you guys have to stand on is that it was a frickin' Google Doc.
Again, Cenk is completely right. Were it not for the fact that a Google Doc is technically public, they wouldn't have even the flimsiest of reasons to object to what these soccer players did, nor would the school newspaper. If these men had said these things to the female soccer players directly or mailed out this list to them, you can be sure this school newspaper journalist would have mentioned that. But the fact that she's saying it was a publicly available document, even though it really isn't, demonstrates that's all she had. She couldn't even say that the women named in the Google Doc had even found this document before the school newspaper published it. All she could do is say it was publicly available and hope nobody would ask, okay, it's technically available, but did anyone even read it? Were there any real victims here before you published it? No. All she could do is push the fact that the Google document is technically publicly available and leap from that to publicly punish the men who wrote it. What is the world coming to when the only person who can see this witch hunt for what it was is Cenk freaking Uygur of the Young Turks? What is the world coming to when he is, well, it looks like the good guy? Oh, by the way, it turns out Harvard has a female president who hates men and or also doesn't understand the nature of Google Docs and punished a group of men as a result. Publicly. Men, they've made their point loud and clear. Stay away from Harvard.
And so
well, that's what
theoretically, it is possible that somebody could go into your Google Doc and find that, right? But if they rubbed it in, if they did it in an actual public way, they put it on their Facebook profile or something, then I would turn around and be with you. That's uncalled for. You want to have private conversations between you, that's fine. But if you make it public, then Anna's right, and it becomes intimidation, and it becomes ugly, and it makes people feel uncomfortable. Here, they did not intend for it to be public.
Right, and that's why I have a problem with it too.
They made a 5% error by putting it in a goddamn Google Doc, and they're like, God damn it, it turns out other people can look at that Google Doc.
Because these are conversations that are happening at every university with every soccer team and male soccer team and female soccer team, and they didn't write it down and put it in a Google Doc, which is why I have a problem with this death sentence sanction for these kids playing for the year. It's not a defense of what they did, but it's just sort of it's boys and girls, and boys are uglier.
I guess Michael Schur isn't a completely lost cause. He's not excusing what they did, but he is acknowledging that the punishment they received was unjustified.
You know, and
it's just,
and by the way, I'm not convinced of that. I won't even grant that.
Okay,
so
their language can be. Forget what I. Okay, forget that part of it. That's not the point.
You know, if Cenk Uygur and Michael Schur were talking about this over lunch or something, I would be willing to bet Michael would probably have come around to Cenk's opinion eventually. I don't know, but given his hasty concession there, he seems like he could be brought around eventually.
Stories involving women in, athletic groups, creating these types of documents where they're talking about the size of a man's and whether or not he's worth being rated at a 10 or if he's worth being rated at a -5.
Okay, so women do this as well. Anna voluntarily declares that they've talked about this before. I would expect her to then condemn those women just like she condemned these male soccer players. If she has any shred of consistency, then if she's going to bring this up, she should immediately follow up with saying, and that's just as wrong for those women to do it too.
Okay, so they didn't put it in a Google Doc, Anna. Now, when you go to a club, you and your girlfriends don't talk about the guys and whether they're hot or not. Do you have them? Do you humor their approach based on whether they're hot or not?
That is so different, Cenk.
No, it is rating people on their attractiveness.
This is not just rating them on their attractiveness, Cenk.
Oh my, someone is losing this argument and she is not happy.
No, this is not just rating them on their attractiveness. Talking about a woman saying like, first of all, these are college freshmen coming in, being recruited into the soccer team, and they're being minimized to nothing more than let's keep it real. Is it an attractive vagina
every
or an
time I walked into a club, I was reduced to a...
I'm done. Can I finish my point? Okay? It's a little different. I don't go into a club, even though I guess this wouldn't bother men. I don't go into a club thinking like, yeah, he wants
Oh, bull crap. That's why men go to clubs in the first place, you disingenuous whore! Oh, should I not have said that? I'm sorry. I'll be sure to write it down in a document on my computer instead, but really, that doesn't really matter, does it? Notice Anna isn't talking about the public nature of the document anymore, because it's not enough that it wasn't public, it's still bad to write it, period, according to Anna, because they wrote unacceptable things in the document. I guess I'd better just think it and never let people know that's what I think, because if I do, then I deserve to be vilified. No wonder feminism has become synonymous with man-hating.
Like, we just don't talk like that, right? Do I tell my friends, just let me finish my point?
Okay.
Yeah, don't you dare contradict me. I am having my man-hating feminist rant over here. Do not interrupt.
Okay? We don't go in there, I don't know.
That's what it comes down to. Anna's got nothing. She ain't got nothing. And it sure didn't help that Cenk derailed her with just 3 words.
Go ahead, just finish. No, I
I'm sorry
totally lost my
interrupted you.
train of thought.
I know, it's my fault. You're right. No,
No, it's fine. You think it's okay. We have a difference of opinion. When we have conversations about so-called rape culture, especially in Ivy League schools, and when we have stories involving frats going in front of, women's groups or sororities, saying things like no means yes, and yes means and we get mad about that, we can't get mad about that because apparently that type of behavior is acceptable. You just have to be a little more secretive about it.
No.
Okay, you can't be public about it. That's the only difference.
What you just said sounds completely different from what was quoted from the male soccer players' Google Doc. They weren't instructing each other to interpret women's words to mean something they didn't. Privately or publicly, that would constitute a legitimate problem, assuming they weren't joking. Thankfully, Cenk is going to rise to the occasion once again. He really takes Anna to the woodshed on this.
That's right.
No, I totally disagree, okay? So when you chant that in public, your intent is to intimidate people and to say, we're in charge and you're not, and you're worthless, okay? That is your intent when you do it, when you're chanting publicly, especially something that crass. So if we say they meant to do this in private, but they're not allowed to do that, well, that's it, okay? Any guys out there or any women out there, you're not allowed to talk about anybody's bodies and whether you would do them or not, okay? That's it. Shush! Oh, that guy came by and you didn't find him attractive at all? He was 400 pounds and he says something awkward? No! Don't you dare judge him on his looks. Because we'll kick you out of school, we'll end your program, etc. No, don't you dare judge. You just reduced him to a body. That's all you did. That's what every woman does in a club. That's what every guy does in a club. That's what every guy does in college. That's what every woman does in college. So because we are human beings and we look and we go, hey, am I attracted to you or not? That's what happens. Now, they made the mistake of accidentally, somewhat, making it public if someone else went into their Google Doc. Every guy and every woman has had this conversation in a college.
And all of God's people said amen. Cenk is being perfectly reasonable, and he's showing Anna Kasparian up for what she is, a man-hating feminist on a witch hunt to punish men for daring to say out loud what they think in their heads. If only he wasn't so off-base 90% of the time. He'd make a great anti-feminist.
Okay, let me try to calmly explain the importance of language, okay? Language matters, and you're minimizing this to nothing more than people rating someone as hot or not, okay? This goes further than that because of the language involved, okay? Do women judge men based on the way they look? Of course they do. That's human activity, that's human nature, that's something we agree on. But it's different when you refer to an individual as someone who wants.
Why? Why is that different? You're repeating yourself, Anna, and the question remains the same. Why should a man not speak those particular words? And who are you to say that's not allowed? You're not their mother, you're not their father, and you're not their pastor. You're just some prissy, judgmental lady on the internet. Who made you the language police?
When you use that type of language, okay, it's degrading.
Why? And by the way, what if it's true? Why is it denigrating to say a woman wants to have sex with a man? I don't think that's degrading. I understand you think that it is, but you still can't tell us why you think that it is.
So that's the issue here. It's not like, oh my God, men are trying to decide whether or not they find these women attractive. Of course they do that, okay? It's more about the way they speak about these women, the way that they're degrading them, and of course they're gonna have a problem with that. I think that the language is wrong, and we disagree on that.
Yes, you disagree, but only one of you has a defensible position. Cenk answered every question you threw at him with perfect ease. Thankfully, Cenk had the last word on this.
Last thing. So I agree with you that you've boiled it down to the part that we disagree on, okay? So the language there, if it was public, I would agree with you. If they went and chanted in front of the girls' soccer team, you all want, Jesus Christ, that's super ugly. It's, again, degrading, intimidating, etc., okay? You took the worst example of what one of them wrote in jest to his friends, and then you make it public, and then you go, you see, he meant to degrade women. No, he meant to make a joke among his friends. This is actual locker room talk, okay? So do they all think like, oh yeah, no, that's a fact, she wants. No, it's a joke, they don't know. They're just kids who are like, oh yeah, that one's too tall, that one's too short, she wants this and she wants that. And yes, sometimes they say it in super crass language. But the whole difference is whether they meant to like put those women down in public in a way that they would actually hold them back. If they meant to do that, then I'm 100% on your side. I don't think they meant to do that. I think they meant to have a private conversation that now we're all privy to because they made a mistake of putting it into that document.
Yeah, well, I think Cenk was exactly right, and again, what what an amazingly fun thing it was to see him and Anna go at it so heatedly. That was just funny. She was so in the wrong. She's so unfair and judgmental, and Cenk Uygur did not let her get away with that. Gosh, if only he was more reasonable most of the time, but still, to see it happen, that was a lot of fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this little debacle with me. Thanks for watching. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and like always, I can't wait to see you again on the Prince Asbel channel.